So when you talk about AI, like in one conversation, it can go all the way from, "Hey, you should have paid the authors," to "It's going to kill civilization," right? And it's like all mixed in there. You're like, which one are we
Yeah.
talking about right now? But the one from that I really feel like matters from a Christian perspective is just understanding of what it means to be a human, right? It's your
Yes.
anthropology.
Yes.
And what it means to be a reasoning person. If you have a low view of what it means to be human, it would make sense that an LLM could be a human. But if you're a Christian and you believe something about that there's something called like divine logos, that there's something unique that God has given us in our free will, in our ability to choose, then it wouldn't make sense that an LLM could be that. Because all an LLM is doing is just predicting based off of what it's seen before, right?
Welcome to the Circle Dwellers podcast, a production of the Protestant Monastic Order of Life Mission Fellowship. This is a show about living out the gospel in an intentional Christian community. My name is Matt Krell. I'm here with my brother and co-host Timothy Krell. And because this would be important knowledge for this episode, we are both programmers and work with artificial intelligence quite a lot these days because we don't know how to code. We know how to code, but I don't know. I think you could probably vouch for me here that we are currently 24 months into losing our jobs in 6 months. So anyway,
yeah, a programmer that both Matt and I enjoy following and keeps posting that on Twitter, where he keeps an update and he says, "Okay, FYI, we are now 48 months into the 6 months until all
I love it so
AI
much.
A code is written by AI."
I love it so much. It's just a great having that monthly reminder to nope, you're okay, but dude, you're okay. It's fantastic because there's just so much hype about this all around. But anyway, what we wanted to do though is kind of talk about some of that because we're not AI experts by any means, but we do understand how computers work. So we kind of wanted to tell people like how to think about this and kind of our experience with working with AI. And because there's a lot of, I think, bad ideas floating around about this. Not just like, oh, it's going to replace all programmers or whatever. Okay. It's also a lot of things like, hey, is AI conscious? Or like, is the singularity coming? This is going to outstrip human intelligence soon, right? And needless to say, we are very skeptical of this, and we want to explain to you why.
Yeah, I mean, and one thing that's difficult about the AI topic is it spans so many different areas of concern, and they all kind of get tangled up together, right? Like there's all sorts of ethics questions about how the AI was created and whether, different intellectual property and, different things were used in the creation, whether those people should be compensated, right? There's all that whole aspect of it. There's whether the results that it produces are good or not, and what the quality of that is, and whether you should feel bad if you like the output of AI or not. There's, whether using it is morally okay because of, like said, the morals of how it was created and all the ethics of how it was created. But then also just using it on its own and what it does, is that okay? And then all the way down to, is this something that will then actually end society because it becomes super intelligent and murders everybody like Skynet or something? And so when you talk about AI, like in one conversation, it can go all the way from, "Hey, you should have paid the authors," to "It's going to kill civilization," right? And it's like all mixed in there. You're like, which one are we talking about right now?
That's so true though, because like for me, when I think about AI, I think of like, oh, image creation models like Stable Diffusion. That's like a different topic compared to like what I do with my programming work.
Yeah, and
like I think about them differently. It's different math. They're different issues. issues.
Exactly. And
Anyway.
even what AI is
Yeah,
very
exactly.
complicated, right? Because here's the thing, right? You can just see um you can see this progression even in the terms. So there for a while, people have been for a very long time working on AI, right? And guess what? We've had AI for a while, and what it meant was the little grunt in Halo would run out and shoot at you in the video game, right? And then it would dodge back behind the tree when you shot back at him, and then he would come out. That was AI. Like that we had AI because it was artificial intelligence, right? Like it had certain behaviors code in. It was AI, and like there, you literally, if you went, you would go and look like, how do I code AI into my game so that the enemies behave in a way that's interesting for the player, right? But then there's also like, that's also not necessarily what people mean by AI, right? Because there's also like AI, and they talk about like robots and stuff. And I think I never watched the movie, but like there's Spielberg, I think, made the movie AI, which is about like these androids and stuff, right? And like a robot with that looks sort of human, and like that's AI too, right? And it's so like the term is like mega overloaded, and then to the point where we had large language models, which are just, they spit out text, right? Like that's what they do. You put text into them and they spit text out that looks contextually correct, based on what you put in. Now that's AI, and that's been really heavily marketed today, and that's generally what people AI mean. But they also mean there's AI art, which is very much a different process, which is a diffusion process for generating images, which is a whole different thing. And at a fundamental level, with some of the math, like I think some of the math is fairly similar in terms of what an LLM and like a diffusion model image generator is doing. But it's really interesting, and we'll get into, like with LLMs, they talk about those as being able to reason, but nobody talks about the image generator AI necessarily reasoning at all, like, or whether they're conscious. Like nobody was asking if like the thing that spits out a picture of Trump holding an ice cream cone while riding on the back of a tiger, like that, like, oh, it must have consciousness. But the text generation model, they started talking about that on there, which is interesting. But so then we have all those are all called AI. And then so all of a sudden you hear, oh, what are we working on? Well, we've made AI. Oh, we're working on AGI, artificial general intelligence. That's what we really care about, right?
Didn't we achieve that a couple months ago now?
And then but then things start coming out, like you start hearing about agentic AI, where like it's not just a large language model. It can do tool calls, and it can execute things on your computer, and it can delete stuff, like, oh, wow. Right. So maybe that's starting to become AGI. So now you have, because like it's more general, it can do different things, and so now they're talking about ASI, artificial super intelligence, right? And at some point, the thing is, right, like they make AI, and then you need to raise more capital in a Series C funding, right? So now you have to say, well, okay, we made AI, now we're making AGI, right? And then you get to Series D, and it's like, well, we made AGI, we're working on ASI now, right? At some point, after they've become like 30% of the entire GDP or something, and and are using so much power that we have to have like more nuclear power plants and things, then at that point they'll come up with another term. It'll be ASSI, it'll be ASDI, AI super duper intelligence, right? Like, because they'll have already branded something else as ASI at that point.
I prefer
and they'll need to raise more money
because it's a little bit more on point on some things. But
yeah, exactly. So
anyway, I'm sorry to my audience.
Just like anytime, it's just interesting. You just start seeing like there's the topic of AI, and then there's also all the marketing and the entrepreneurial raising money and hype and all of that around it as well. And it's kind of hard to separate those two. If you hear someone talking about AI and like pontificating about it, and they're not mentioning that idea of how much of this is driven by venture capital, and how much, what amount of a whisper of like, oh, I heard Sam Altman say he was, it was so amazing that they got, the AI to do this thing. You realize like he's selling something. He's trying to make, he's trying to be the first trillionaire. Like there's and you're just taking that at face value, like so there's a lot of different takes, very legitimate takes that you can have about what AI is and the future, what's going to happen. But if the person you're listening to that you think is saying a good point is not also in the same breath also talking about how there's probably some kind of marketing going on here, and there's some kind of game being played for financial reasons, you probably should ignore them, because they're not thinking about the whole picture here to try to understand what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, there was a lecture that you and I watched fairly recently about artificial intelligence that I thought was...
I didn't just watch it, I attended it.
That's right. There. You technically you actually went and attended it. I had the unfortunate privilege of having to watch the recording. But yes, there was a great lecture done by Spencer Klavan about artificial intelligence that brought a lot of clarity both to me and to you, and I think would bring a lot of clarity to a great deal of our audience as well. So what we wanted to do is kind of talk about his arguments in this. Basically, all LLMs are, large language models are, is they are essentially parrots. What they do is they take in sounds that they trained on actual human texts, like books and, Reddit posts and such, and then they repeat that back. But that doesn't mean that they are themselves reasoning or that they understand what those words are meant to communicate. It's really just parrots squawking sounds back at you. And to illustrate this point, he has this funny joke about a lady who sees a parrot in a pet shop, and the parrot calls her ugly every time she passes by. And then the store manager, she complains to the store manager. The store manager then shows the parrot, like, if you call this lady ugly one more time, I'm going to turn you into a hat for the lady. And then the next time the lady passes the shop window, the parrot says, hey, lady, guess what? What? You know what? Right? Which the reason that's funny is because, the parrot obviously was just repeating sounds, right? He wasn't actually conscious, but now the twist is that he was conscious, right? And so that illustrates the point here. Large language models are simply just trained on sounds that we humans make, in this case, text. And they're repeating back those things, but it doesn't mean they are actually reasoning. And so what Spencer talks about is a concept called logos, which, as many Christians are familiar with that word because it opens up the, the Gospel of John. Logos is kind of maybe you can correct me on this, but it's like, it means the word, but it's also like human thoughts and a couple other concepts like squished together, I guess.
Yeah. Right? The logos is a thing that I'm very interested in and is very fascinating, but it's also one of those things where I feel wholly inadequate to ever, it's like, because I know I will sound very ignorant when I talk about it, but it's because it's a very, it's a idea and a very mysterious idea that's fascinated philosophers since, time began, essentially. But yeah. I think what you said is close enough to being, helpful.
Yeah, at least as much as we can do for you. But basically, you can make a distinction between inner logos and outer logos. And outer logos is like the words that you say, and it's like sounds that animals make, right? And these are always used to express what your current state is, right? I'm hungry, or I'm in pain, and so forth. And animals obviously have this. And LLMs apparently are expressing outer logos as well. But as far as we know, only humans have inner logos. And inner logos is the capacity to reason and to make sense of the world. And one interesting experiment was done. There was this monkey who was taught sign language. And this monkey, used the sign language to communicate things. And he did communicate things like, give me orange. But he never was able to say, are there more oranges? right? That's an inner logos kind of thought, this sort of more abstract thinking. He was never able to say something like that, never got close to saying something like that. And that suggests then that humans are really the only creatures out there who possess an inner logos, an inner reasoning. Well, if you look at how an LLM is actually created, where it's trained on this large amounts of text, it's just trained on outer logos, right? So it's not thinking on its own.
Yeah, exactly. The question, there's a sort of philosophical understanding, which I need to do more reading on, but from what I understand, it's called functionalism, which essentially suggests that, as long as it looks like it's conscious, it is conscious. In other words, that, as long as the outputs match what you would expect from a conscious reasoning being, right? Then for all intents and purposes, it is, which don't find persuasive at all. But really, and we're talking at the high level AI thing. There's, like we said, and it'd be fun to do maybe more podcasts on it, but there's so many other topics that you can talk about.
We probably
AI,
should. There's
right?
a lot of, as you can see,
Um,
we've thought about this quite a lot. That's why we
but
can ramble about this so easily.
the one from like that I really feel like matters from a Christian perspective is just understanding of what it means to be a human, right? It's your anthropology.
Yes.
And what it means to be a reasoning person. If you have a low view of what it means to be human, that you're very, you don't really believe in a soul, you don't believe in free will, you believe that we're just determined by the chemicals that are running through our brain, and all those things, then it would make sense that an LLM could be a human, right? Mm-hmm. Because your prior assumption is that all that a human is doing is what an LLM is doing. It's pattern matching based on a bunch of experiential weights that have been learned, right? And so by definition, if that's what a human is, then yes, an LLM can be a human because it's doing the exact same thing, right? But if you're a Christian and you believe something about that there's something called like divine logos in a person that gives us, that there's something unique that God has given us in our free will, in our ability to choose and to embody truth and principles, then it doesn't, it wouldn't make sense that an LLM could be that, because all an LLM is doing is just predicting based off of what it's seen before. Right. And it's just parroting, like that. Spencer Klavan's wonderful illustration there. The parrot doesn't know what it's saying, and neither does the LLM, but we know what we're saying. And like I kind of tend to think, I think it's possible for you to lose your free will and your agency to some extent, where the more sin and the more you damage yourself and the more you become blind, you can become more
the parrot.
Yeah, you can become the parrot, right? Because like I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't right to say there's some aspect of our brains that does work like an LLM, and our personalities utilize that to some extent when you answer things without thinking about them and stuff, and but that's not all that we are, and that's not the most important part of what we are.
But that's my answer to like the tech bros to say, yeah, but that's what humans do. They're just pattern matching all the time. Well, I don't know about you, brother, but like, I certainly hope you are not doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And I also, think there's sort of a cynical, like, people in power who want to control everything tend to think like, actually, well, like I'm not like that, but maybe 90% of the population is, like I'm special, but everyone else is an NPC,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But I do think though, there's something interesting. Like, do you remember in Prince Caspian, there's a part where the children are attacked by a bear because this is in the Narnia series. In Narnia, the animals talk, and it's very much a bad thing to kill a talking animal because that's like a person, right? And a bear attacks them because they've come back after being gone from Narnia for many years, and everything's different. And a bear attacks them, and they end up killing it because it was going to kill them. And they have this little philosophical discussion as they're skinning it for meat for them to eat on their travels because they're traveling in the wilderness. And Lucy and Susan reflect on, do you think, because the bear was a dumb bear. They realized it was not a talking bear, and they were wondering. And I think Trumpkin says, or someone says, like some of the animals have become dumb, like they've lost the ability to talk.
Yeah.
And I think Lucy asks Susan, like, do you think that could happen in our world? That no normal talking people, and I think there's it's sort of a disturbing thought, but you realize that I think there is a certain point where if you give yourself over to sin and you don't follow truth and you become more and more broken, that you become more NPC like, and you become more LLM like, and there's less of, I think, like, that is your ultimate end. I don't think that that transformation could ever happen like fully necessarily. I wouldn't want to find it out, but in this life, but that's your trajectory, right? Of where it's going.
You could argue that demonic possession is basically that it's losing your talking voice.
I suppose. Yeah. So yeah,
in some respects.
That's true. Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot to think about there. But all that to say, like when you so before Klavan's talk, there was another speaker there who was much more concerned about AI, like saying we need to stop doing AI right now, and people who are working on ASI should be basically branded as traitors and treason and all this stuff. And I find it really hard I think there's lots of other dangers of AI. I don't think that's the danger though, in that it could actually become intelligent, and actually be this sort of Skynet thing. I think that's just a failure to fully have a good anthropology of what a human is, to think that could become that. Now, I really like what Andrew Klavan's concern is, which is that a lot of us might end up thinking it's that, that we.
Yeah. But you're right.
Yeah, I mean, not Andrew, Spencer Klavan. Was Spencer Klavan's a thing of that, because we don't have a higher view of what a person is, we might end up turning it into like a giant digital Ouija board and just be like treating it like it's something that it's not, and that could be very, very bad for society, right? But I think people who are even arguing that AI is dangerous and can become this sentient thing are actually contributing to that problem of us having a much lower view of humanity.
Yeah, I agree. And Sam Altman, I believe, is on record for saying he was trying to create a super intelligence, a god, with AI. So, that risk of idolatry, because let's call it what it is absolutely real. So I think our warning for Christians who are using this tool would be, it's just a tool. It's not conscious. It can't think. And you should never, ever, ever, ever think that is what is going on. The dangers start when you start believing that that is what is going on.
When you treat it as if it were that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there are like very disturbing stories of people who've, harmed themselves or did some crazy stuff because they started treating the AI like that. So that's, if there's a satanic vector through that technology, it's that. But if you don't approach it that way and just approach it the way we do, which is just a tool that produces crummy code on occasion, if that, then we would say that you're fine. But no, it's not conscious.
The like the best pragmatic thing to do, like for your own sanity, is to just watch. The easiest thing that AI will do is it'll make you lazier, and that you get the, and it can be sort of addicting in terms of like you get this instant gratification. So like I think like the first line of defense mentally should just be to be really aware of that instant gratification, and that like so for example, like if you're working on a project, right, you might be used to working on that really hard, and it's going to take you like 2 hours or something to put together a bunch of stuff. And maybe like part of that you can have the AI do, and you feed it in, the documents you're working from and stuff. And you're like, write the thing that I need to write. And it does it instantly. Well, so like say in that scenario, you saved yourself, an hour and 40 minutes worth of work, right? Well, take another extra half hour to read through what it said and really, think about it hard and rework it and figure out, is that what this needs to be, and put in creativity into it. Versus, because it's like, it's really interesting how much it'll just one shot your own creativity, in that you put something in, you were going to spend a lot of time and labor on that thing. And because it seemingly did it so quickly that you have no desire at all to put in any kind of effort into it. It's a really strange phenomenon. So like the thing is, you should do is like, no, I will take that speed up, but now I'm going to put in intelligence into it and really, make this my own, and really check what it said, and really think about it and rework it, and, and all that kind of stuff. I think that helps just for your own mental sanity, while still gaining something from it, and being able to use it usefully as a tool.
One last thing to note too is we follow AI news and lots of commentary on this because we're nerds and we're interested in the technology. But there is rumblings that AI is about to crash in a massive catastrophic bubble, and it's built on the assumption that these agents and tools are going to get significantly better very soon. But as far as we can tell personally, and a lot of people are starting to see this, that doesn't seem to be the case. Like, we're getting only very, very incremental gains on these newer models. So people are predicting that the amount of money that's being poured into these things is way disproportionate to how useful the tool is, and thus a bubble's coming. There
definitely seems to be a crazily huge bubble going on, and it really, because I mean, the argument goes something like because the amount of money that OpenAI is losing, it's like a lot of these companies are not anywhere near being profitable at all, and like the amount of expenditure that comes over all the electricity they're burning and everything they do to make these things for what they are doesn't seem to make sense. But there's a lot of venture capital money that's willing to just throw money at the AI thing because that's the cool new thing. And the argument goes something like this: it doesn't matter how much money you lose, because if you can make truly something that's just completely independently super intelligent, powerful, right, and you win that game, then you win everything, right? So it doesn't matter how much money you lose, because you will have won the biggest battle ever, right? And that's all well and good, but what if you can't, that isn't possible? Like that, because there's a whole nother thing to explain here, but there's sort of this thing of like, it's like if you get the parrot, right, and you keep saying the parrot keeps getting better at talking, right? And we keep training the parrot, and it's able to say more and more sentences. Therefore, at this trajectory, it will write a play better than Shakespeare. Right? That's the reasoning. If you squint at it, that almost seems reasonable, because it's like, well, talking is very similar to writing a play that's as good as Shakespeare, right? But maybe it isn't. And it might not be.
I'll tell you right now,
depending on what your worldview is, that actually doesn't make sense.
I'll tell you, as a Shakespeare lover right now, that is definitely not the case.
Yeah. So
to that end, we actually did an episode on Shakespeare. And
yes,
I think you guys might enjoy this now, since, well, AI is going to replace everything anyway. So you might want to get interested in the classics before we all forget.
Before all you have to watch is, I mean, before AI, they weren't even doing a good job of making stuff. But once they have AI, guess what? It's going to be even worse, because it's trained on all the crap that they made before.
Yeah, so definitely start learning how to enjoy Shakespeare and some of the classics of Western literature before the apocalypse comes. Anyway, so I will link that video on your screen now, and I will see you in that episode.
Thank you for your attention, everybody. Have a blessed week.